Welcome back to a brand new edition of Views from the Booth. I am your host, Reed Becker, and joining me today, he is the play-by-play for the Brooklyn Nets, the NFL on CBS, college basketball on CBS, and also Thursday Night Football. You have the now national NBA on TNT, and occasionally he'll also just do some tennis. He is also just in general, one of the nicest and funniest people that I know. The absolute best, Ian Eagle. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining me. Hope all is well by you with everything right now.
What an introduction, Reed. Thank you very much. Great to see you, by the way, or see you.
Is everything all right going by considering the circumstances right now?
Yeah, everything's going very well considering all the circumstances, family-wise, all here, my son, my daughter, my wife. So little unexpected reunion for us, which has been great. We like each other, so that definitely helps. And we're trying to grind through it and stay patient like everybody else.
Absolutely. So I want to start, obviously, with the Brooklyn Nets. I would have to start with, but so specifically with the Nets, though, we'll go a little backwards because when Kenny Atkinson got fired, were you surprised that he was let go so unexpectedly? Because I was definitely surprised. Obviously now we hear that the players weren't a fan of his, but more specifically, you would have to imagine Katie and Kyrie. But what was your reaction to that?
I was surprised, very surprised. I thought Kenny was doing an excellent job within the franchise, developing talent, working with talent. Obviously, this year didn't go completely as planned because of the injury to Kyrie Irving. Kevin Durant, we knew, was not going to be a part of it. But my sense of it, I don't know this as a fact, but just my sense is there might have been some indifference as to what the future held for Kenny Atkinson in Brooklyn, and he may have caught wind of that relationship that he had with the GM, Sean Marks, the man that hired him. I think they did sit down and have a heart-to-heart, and there's a very good chance that when Kenny realized that it was not a guarantee that he would be back and would not have the chance to coach both KD and Kyrie Irving in the 2021 season, that might have been enough for him to say, okay, I'm good. I'd rather just move on now and have some opportunities to get myself ready for another coaching job down the road with another franchise. And there might have been an agreement in place. Kenny is a very passionate guy, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve. So if indeed that's what went down, that would not surprise me at all. I think Kenny will be a head coach in the NBA again. I think it actually could happen pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a head coach as soon as next season. Now, obviously, with the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world right now, there might be some teams that reassess what they're doing at that position. But if there are openings at the level that we anticipate in the NBA, I would think that Kenny Atkinson will get his fair share of opportunities to continue his head coaching career elsewhere.
I totally agree with that, with Kenny getting another shot. He definitely deserves one. But now looking to the future for the Nets, the head coaching search, there's the names that are on the list. You have Jack Vaughn, Ty Lue, Mark Jackson, Jason Kidd. And Jeff Van Gundy, I guess you could also throw in there as well. But my question is, who makes the most sense? Because I had Brian Geltzeiler on recently, and he was saying that, first of all, he thought he was not going to be Ty Lue. He said either Jason Kidd or Mark Jackson. But because here's what his point was, that it's obviously we know Kyrie and KD are running it, but he has to be more of a KD having more input than Kyrie since he's the number one guy. What sense do you think direction they're leaning towards with the head coaching search, or do you agree with that?
I'm not sure. I think more than anything else, Reed, we have to see if there's an NBA season. If this NBA season resumes and Jacque Vaughn does an excellent job and Kyrie and KD are comfortable with him, then it may not get to that stage of talking to other candidates. Now, look, I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, this is a larger scope issue with the NBA. If the NBA season ends and now the Nets just have to focus in on a head coach and reloading for 2021, there may be some other factors involved here. There's no doubt KD, Kyrie, their opinions will be asked for and respected. But this is a case where the general manager, Sean Marks, and the owners have to feel confident and comfortable with this hire. This is a really important position for a team that has a window to possibly vie for a championship if healthy. So it's not one of these happenstance decisions that the team and the franchise will make. And I don't think it's as simple as just asking KD or Kyrie, who do you want? I think there will be some deeper analysis put into it. I think a head coach is still going to have to sell them on what it is they believe the right philosophy is moving forward with two superstar players, and also their opinions on this roster and where improvements may need to be made. So not a cut and dry decision by any stretch. Tom Thibodeau's name could also come up in conversation, someone that has had success in previous stints in Chicago specifically. I think Sean Marks will put together a list. I think Jacques Vaughn's name will be on that list. And I think he would like to see Jacques be given a fair chance. And he's not going to base it off of just 2 games and 2 games only. That's why one of the myriad of reasons we want a season to continue in the NBA. But I think the Nets want to use that time to assess and to make some determinations as to where they really see that position going forward and who would be the best fit for them philosophically, on a personal level, and interpersonally with not just the 2 star players, but the rest of what the roster is going to look like.
Do you, I just, yeah, it's true that you have to that the GM ultimately will be making decision. I just see as if because we know that today's players are going to run the show. So example, LeBron in Cleveland, they're running the shots. So you still think ultimately that it's not, so you're basically saying ultimately it's not going to be a one shot be all end all situation with them just.
Yeah. I mean, my point would be this, Reed. If you and I were having this conversation 1 year ago in regards to the Los Angeles Lakers, I don't think that Frank Vogel would have been the coach that everybody talked about. Circumstances can change. And LeBron James and Frank Vogel had no connection whatsoever from previous stints other than going up against one another. But when you get into a situation where you're interviewing coaches, you're determining who's the right fit, and yes, you are leaning on your star players, but if it was solely up to LeBron, I'm not sure Frank Vogel would have gotten the job. So we do have to understand that not everything is simple. Not everything is, yep, there's the name, put him in the position, and away we go. There are deeper layers to this that come into play with the NBA. When you're handing over that amount of money to an individual to coach your team, everybody has to be okay with it. Ownership, GM, the players involved. So with the Nets, it's just not that simple. To say it's Ty Lue because Kyrie played for him in Cleveland, that it's not that simple to me. It requires a little bit more depth and analysis to figure out what's the right fit and how do all the pieces fit together.
To build off your LeBron and Frank Vogel point, because originally they were going with Ty Lue,
Mm-hmm.
but then that obviously the contract couldn't get done, and then that all happened. So that's a good point. Continuing with the Nets, though, there's been a lot of talk about them possibly trying to go for the fences to get a third star to pair up with Kyrie and KD. There's been some talk of like possibly Karis LeVert getting shipped out for a player, or Spencer Dinwiddie, although I personally don't think that they should get rid of Dinwiddie, considering that Kyrie can always drops injured and you need a backup point guard. But do you think, are they really going to go for it with a big three with Brooklyn? Because the other point is, like, I've heard recently, like, Sean Marks talked about how they need another guy to help be the leader, which I kind of thought was taking a shot at Kyrie and KD's leadership lack of. But do you think they're going to try to get another big guy in there?
Everything that I've seen from Sean Marks during his time as the GM has led me to believe that he is very shrewd. And he has a very good idea of what he's doing, how he sees this team. And yes, while many may have been very surprised that the Nets landed Kyrie and Kevin Durant, those around the team and the organization were not as shocked. Look, of course, when the moment hits and you know you've got two of the best players in the NBA coming to your team, there is that instance of, wait, is this real? This is happening now. The Brooklyn Nets have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So once you get over that initial reaction, you realize that the Nets were building a very strong reputation around the NBA with agents in particular and with star players. Players pay attention and players talk to one another. And if players are happy in Brooklyn with the facilities, with the way that the franchise treats their families and the way that they look over their players, the word gets around. And I think that's what happened. It was a perfect storm in many ways for the Nets that it happened when it did. So now, trying to look at the next chapter, they have to evaluate if they believe Karis LeVert is ready to take on the responsibility of what it requires to be alongside Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They have to evaluate, does Spencer Dinwiddie fit into the culture of what they're building? Will he buy in? Will he be someone that will be a productive member as the dynamic shifts with KD and Kyrie getting even more attention? These are the questions that they have to ask themselves. Jared Allen, are they willing eventually to pay him? And if they're not, then do they look to make a deal because they know in the future he may not be a part of it? I don't know the answers. I don't know. Only Sean Marks, and I'm not sure he even knows at this moment. There will come a time where he really has to sit down with ownership and figure out who stays and who goes. But if you're telling me that there's a chance to get a player that would upgrade their roster and a legitimate star that already has the resume that normally you look for in someone that can go and win a championship, I think the Nets will keep their options open. And they will be certainly open to the idea that if that deal makes them better, they'll make the deal. That's what we've seen from Sean Marks. So it's a roundabout way, but if it works best for the Nets in their eyes and they think they can win now with that piece, then you might see one of the players that you might be visualizing right now. I don't know if you want to give me some names, but you might see him in a Nets uniform.
Well, one of the names that I had jot down was Bradley Beal was one that came up, although I don't think Washington's willing to anytime soon.
I don't think so either.
Right. And then, I mean, that was really the only one that came off the top of my head. But moving on to the next topic, though, because staying with the NBA, though, which team, considering that if the season is now in a standstill, which team have, considering that you have had front row seats with the Nets and then doing nationally, do you think had the best chance to win the championship?
I really think the Clippers had a legitimate chance to win the title. I think the Milwaukee Bucks had a legitimate chance to win the title. And hopefully we will see a playoff of some form once the smoke clears here. The Lakers with LeBron, you've got to give them a chance. I don't know about their team and their makeup. I don't know if they shoot it quite well enough to make a run through all the way to a championship, but it's LeBron. So certainly you have to give him at least a chance to go out and win a title. Those three teams in particular, to me, stood out above everybody else. Could there be some wild cards in there? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I still think, despite the fact they've been up and down, the Celtics, when everything was clicking, could be a team that might be able to knock some teams off in the East.
Toronto.
Still give Toronto props. Great team unity and chemistry. Nick Nurse has already shown with Kawhi that he could win a championship, but it was an incredible run last year. They still have that mettle about them. Miami is a curious team. I don't think any of the teams that I just mentioned could win a championship, but could they surprise some teams come playoff time? Philadelphia was still trying to figure it out, but if you get a healthy Ben Simmons and a healthy Joel Embiid, is that a team that I would want to face come playoff time? Probably not. But the three that we mentioned at the top, Reed, those are the three. They stand out above everybody else. Those three teams over the course of this NBA season, they showed more than just glimpses of being championship material.
Yeah, I was going to say for the Lakers, though, I don't think they have the depth as much as, especially like the Clippers, to get in a series against the Clippers. I don't think they're going to be able to play with that, with considering their lack of depth. And then on the Sixers part, though, I would say they're the most inconsistent team I've seen this season. They can't win on the road. So like even when they've had a Simmons or Embiid, like they're just really inconsistent. I don't think. In fact, I don't. It sounds like Brett Brown's likely to possibly lose his job down there. So I don't. Yeah,
I think there are going to be a lot of changes, head coaching changes. Now, again, the only issue that might come into play, budget issues. If there are teams that don't want to pay off the remainder of salaries, normally in the NBA, that's not a problem. These teams are making so much money, and owners, when they know they've got to make a move, they don't necessarily consider the finances of it. Now you may have some more fiscal responsibility based on the fact that obviously this has been a much more challenging time financially, but you could see changes in Philadelphia. You could see a change in Houston. You could see a change in Indiana. These are good teams. These are playoff teams, but there just may be some adjustments made in those spots for those teams that are just trying to look to get over the hump.
Absolutely. Yeah, there could be definitely a bunch of a lot of openings this offseason. Going on to the Last Dance, because I feel like that's like the big have to bring up. So my first question is just in general, like, because obviously now with this Last Dance documentary, it brings up the LeBron Jordan debate just automatically. My question is, considering that you've had front row seats to cover both LeBron and even going back with Jordan, which even the Last Dance, they used one of your calls in one of the recent episodes, which I thought was pretty cool. Do you see any similarities or differences between their styles of play, or just personalities?
Oh, personalities are definitely different. I think what Michael was doing, the competitiveness that he brought, was behind the scenes. And although we knew he was competitive, he didn't show a lot of himself to the media. He was guarded, and he just showed the sides that he was comfortable with. And that's what worked for him. I think with Kobe Bryant, we saw a little bit more. He gave you a look behind the curtain a bit more, and he would show some different sides of himself, and he was okay with that. But it was on his terms. And then LeBron, now in the modern world with social media and so many different platforms, LeBron is basically an open book. So personality wise, you have a better sense of who he is. He shows you his kids. He'll do videos. He produces a show in a barber shop and shares his opinions on not just the NBA, but the world and politics and many different topics. Jordan didn't do that. So a lot of this footage that we're seeing in The Last Dance, it's the first time that a lot of people have gotten a chance to see his real personality, what he was like, because he allowed the cameras to roll behind the scenes. Playing style wise, I think there's a fire that burned in all three of them and a competitive nature that is at an elite level that you just don't see that often. There are a lot of players that believe that they will compete at that level, but it's almost superhuman in many ways. So I think there is a connection there and connective tissue between not just LeBron and Jordan, but Kobe as well. Playing style, whatever it takes. I mean, that to me is what stands out. Jordan is more of a facilitator. That's just who he is. It's who he's always been. If LeBron, excuse me, LeBron more of a facilitator, and Jordan was more of your old school go out and score 50 on you. He would make other guys better, of course, but LeBron will defer a lot more. He's okay with that. And while we've seen in recent years he stepped forward, he's had to, given what he's had around him. There were years, especially when they had the big three in Miami, when LeBron was willing to spread it around a bit more. If LeBron decided, hey, I want to just lead the NBA in scoring every single year, he could. That's how gifted he is. He's just a different level in terms of his build. Jordan worked so hard in the weight room. He was so skinny as a kid and turned himself into a muscular basketball player because he realized he had to. That's how teams were controlling him before he finally got uncorked and won 6 championships. LeBron has always been a physical specimen. He was always bigger than everybody else. That's the one thing that stands out. When I'm courtside or I'm getting ready to do my stand-up before the game and we're literally on the court, ready to go on the air, when LeBron's on the layup line, you realize this is not like other people. He's just not, he's not built that way. Jordan could look like a regular guy. LeBron doesn't. LeBron is just of another species.
Well, I was going to, yeah, that's going on what you were saying about like the way they like play and all that. Because like my point is like it's completely different eras when you try to compare. Like first of all, the rules are just completely different, and then
Yes.
you have like Jordan. Considering I know you said LeBron's obviously like he was already built, but Jordan like the day after they lose, he's already out working out in the weight room, and is spending 24/7 trying to improve. Whereas like I feel like all today's players are just like if they get eliminated, it's either they go to vacation or they're just teaming up with a friend of theirs to go to a new team, which would never happen back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. We understand that. And that's why I don't get caught up in the comparisons like others do. I guess it's a fun argument. It's a fun debate, but it's fruitless ultimately. There's no winner. There's no loser. It's just an opinion, and everybody's got an opinion. I wouldn't fall asleep on LeBron, though, in that work ethic. Just talking to Richard Jefferson, who I work with at Yes, when I've asked him questions off the air about LeBron, he'll tell you he's never been around anybody that's worked as hard as LeBron and works every single day. So he might pull a little bit of a rope-a-dope where he makes you think he's off doing this and off doing that. I think the great ones, they think the game in a different manner, and I think Kobe had that as well. It's just a commitment level that most mortals can't begin to understand and comprehend.
Now, you brought up Kobe a lot. One of my questions about, because like last night's episode specifically, that's brought up now a big discussion about if, because obviously we've seen the tapes with Jordan, like how how he was really tough on his teammates and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But my question about it now is, was he basically, do you think he was too hard? Considering that his teammates, when they did the interview with him, they said, yeah, he was really tough and annoying and all that, but at the end of the day, he was really a good teammate because he pushed us and we were able to win because of him and by pushing us. And then do you think, because it then brings comparisons to Kobe, how he pushed and was kind of a pain as well with his teammates?
I think they were both very hard on people. And I think if you go into any occupation or field and find the best person in that field, there's a pretty good chance that they have similar traits. And sometimes because your standards are so high, it's hard to understand when someone isn't giving maximum effort. Look, results, that's what you're judged on. And I'm sure as teammates reflect and look back on those times, it wasn't all that much fun when Jordan was on them all the time. But like Will Perdue said, and some others in The Last Dance, he was right. he, he may have done it in a way that could have been considered offensive or annoying, but he was right. He knew the areas where he could poke and pick at a scab and get to you. And it did garner incredible results. I met him a few times. I was in his company a few times behind the scenes, and I saw that version of him, the one that used to bust your chops and
In a fun way, or
enjoyed
just like
back and forth.
in like a fun way, you mean, or just?
Yes, in a fun way. In a fun way. Now, I think in a competitive format, it was completely different. It was. He wanted to rip your heart out. And that's how he was wired. I think Kobe wired the same way. I think people question that about LeBron for a long time. And after winning multiple championships, maybe some people backed off. LeBron has a killer instinct. There's no doubt about it. He does. But LeBron is now playing at a time where friendships around the league are very different than what they used to be. If that was a competitor in Michael Jordan's era on the other team, it was pretty straightforward. He was not going to be talking to that guy, hanging with him. Maybe off season or all-star game, they'd share a moment, but it wasn't a deep friendship that formed. With LeBron and the current NBA, it's very different. There is a brotherhood. There is a fraternity. And what you see at the end of games, hugs, embraces, the swapping of jerseys, that was not happening between Jordan and Isaiah Thomas, obviously, and Bill Laimbeer and others. There might have been respect. And when Jordan was asked about Isaiah Thomas, he did give him props as a player. He respected him a great deal. He just didn't like him. I think LeBron is a likable guy, and I think he does want to be liked by his peers. But it's a different era.
Right.
Things are not like they used to be.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And then, I mean, just going based off like what Jordan says, when they bring up like his gambling problem, he's like, no, I don't have it's not a gambling problem. It's more of just like a competition problem, which goes
Yeah.
back
Hey,
to his
whatever works.
desire to, yeah, he always wanted to be the absolute best and to win. Um, Finally, the NFL, because Tom Brady has, as we know, left the Patriots, and along with Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement. Um, Specifically on the Tom Brady part, though, was there? I mean, obviously we knew about uh, the possibility of him possibly leaving after that season. It had been put around, but were you ever getting a sense from when you met with the team, with the Patriots during that season, that this really could be it? Because I mean, I go back to like the Seth Wickersham article from ESPN, which obviously now sheds the whole light. But like,
Yeah.
was there ever a sense during the season from that?
Tom never said it in a meeting. He never pulled us aside and said, hey, by the way, I'm thinking of making a move.
Right.
But if you're asking me, did I get a sense?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely got a sense, not just last year, even the year before that, that there might be something else out there for Tom. And that at some point, maybe breaking away from the Patriots would not be the worst thing for him. Look, financially, there were many years where he was underpaid, but I think a lot of that was done so that he had the best possible team around him. There were a couple of chances where the Patriots could make him whole. And when he came out, remember when he came out and said, hey, I want to play till I'm 45.
Right.
And everyone laughed it off. I remember going into a meeting with him and asking him about it. Like, really? 45? He goes, yeah, 45. Why not? He was dead serious. And the Patriots wanted to keep their options open because they didn't want to commit financially without knowing if Tom Brady still had it in him at 42, 43 to play at the high level that they require. So I think there was an issue there. I think something did happen there. And I think that Tom Brady decided that he did everything he possibly could with the New England Patriots, and why not try something new before he hangs him up? And he gets into a good situation with a very likable head coach in Bruce Arians that's going to cater the offense around Brady. Bruce has been a quarterback whisperer throughout his career, not just as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator and as a QB coach. Now he's got his buddy Gronk there as well. We'll see how much Gronk has left. He's still a young man. So physically, with a year off, he's going to still have to bulk up and get himself back into football shape. They already had very good skill position players and an array of weapons at wide receiver for Brady to work with. Are people surprised it was Tampa? There's not a sexiness that comes with Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers necessarily. Yeah, they probably were. I think people were anticipating the Chargers, a team like that, or LA. But now that you think about it, it does make a lot of sense. And they certainly paid the number that he was looking for as well. So it's going to be really interesting. Let's cross our fingers that there is a football season and we get to see these storylines play out. But if you're asking me, were you shocked that Brady left? I was not. I was not shocked that he ended up deciding to take his career elsewhere.
And what's interesting is that, like, I mean, obviously there's the financial part, but then, like, after the 20 years together with Belichick, if that got to him at some point, and like, I mean, now there was a report from like Gary Myers today that like he wasn't happy with the play calling from Josh McDaniels, that which he says led to a part of it as well. But it's just interesting, like, because like now you have like players. I mean, you've had Damian Woody from ESPN talking about it, and just there's a lot of players that talk about how after that time, after a lot of time with Belichick, you realize like I can't be in this tense atmosphere anymore. Like you have to get out. It feels like, at least to me, like it's the same thing with Brady now. And I mean, ultimately, I wouldn't say that that's going to be a stain on the full stain on Belichick's resume, but I would
No.
say it would be something that people, I guess, would look at a little bit, considering that there's like a lot of players now, and because we just saw it with Brady, but I just find that interesting in a sense.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think it affects Belichick's
Not his
legacy.
legacy in total, but just ironic. Like,
Yeah, I think when you're making that kind of life choice that Tom Brady made, yeah, not just career, but life with his wife and with his kids and how his career is going to be affected, it doesn't come down to one thing. So some could say, well, it's got to be financial. It could be part of it. It's got to be Belichick. Could be part of it. It's got to be he just needed a change. It could be part of it. I think there are a lot of factors that come into play when you're making such a large decision. And I don't think it came to him at the end of this season where he snapped his fingers and said, that's it. I've got it. I think it built over time and it evolved. And I'm sure there were moments along the way, decisions that were made behind the scenes uh, in regards to his people. And I think that may have played a role. You mentioned the Seth Wickersham article that maybe there was a bit more to it. Uh, Gary Myers has excellent sources, so there very well could be something to that. I just think when the greatest quarterback of all time decides that he wants to do this elsewhere, I don't think it's quite as simple as saying, oh, it was Belichick. That was it. That was the end of it. He could have done this many times before, and he realized that New England gave him the best chance to continue to win championships and the best setup of culture to win those championships. So Belichick's style was very helpful for Tom Brady because it provided structure. And yes, that intense atmosphere, others may buckle. Brady, I think, for many years embraced it, liked it, enjoyed it. Maybe now in the final couple of years, he said to himself, okay, I've done that. Maybe I want to try something else before I call it quits.
all right, that's all. Thank you, Ian, so much for doing this today. That's all we got for you. For Iron Eagle, I'm Reed Becker, and we'll see you next time.